Okay, so this is a quick demo of SecureBoot support of Super Grub2 Disk 2.06s2 beta, which is this version here. So first of all, I'm going to explain to you that this virtual machine has two operating systems installed in it. The first one is Debian 11 Bullseye, and the second one is Ubuntu 22.04 Jammy. In addition, the virtual machine has access to this zip. The virtual machine has been set up so that it's secure boot only. So you can only boot in secure boot, okay? So you have some questions related to this that we are going to check, which is, can you boot the Debian kernel directly without the shim binary in your own machine or without the group.cfg? Yes, you can. Can you boot into an Ubuntu kernel without this shim or group.cfg installed? Yes, you can. However, what about Fedora? Can you boot into an can you boot into a Fedora kernel that has not shim? No, you cannot. But I will add the support for this later on the development, because this is a quick demo to demonstrate Debian and Ubuntu. Can you boot, thanks to this image, to a Fedora kernel by the means of bootloading its shim file? Yes, you can. You boot into the shim binary and then it will boot its own group.cfg file. So I'm going to boot the virtual machine and we're going to demonstrate this first one, which does not need anything special here. So let's go. So first of all, I'm going to turn on the virtual machine and I'm going to force the boot to be done from the Super Grub2 Disk, which is here. As you can see here, you can see how you can change the secure boot vendor. So right now we are working with Debian. We are working with Debian. You can see here how you see the version, dev. This is the Debian version. So we don't need to do anything if we want to work with Debian itself. So we can run detect and show boot methods, and we can find the Debian kernel. I know that the Debian kernel is 5.10, okay? So I can boot into this without any need of shim or groove. If you take a look here, you can see how this is trying to boot the kernel that you have here. It's not going to do anything else. So we can run this and it will boot into Debian, no problem. So if you had here, okay, if you had here if you had deleted here the directory EFI where you've got the shim files and the group.cfg files, you could have booted into Debian, no problem. So once again, we're going to go here into Super Grub2 Disk. So we have demonstrated this, that you can boot into Debian without its shim group installed. I have not removed them, but you have to trust me, it works without them. So what about Ubuntu? Okay, Ubuntu. So the way you do that is, first of all, you go into Change Secure Boot Vendor. Take a look here, 2.06 Change Secure Boot Vendor. You select Ubuntu in the x64 platform, which is the one that has everything. It's the most used right now, Ubuntu. And now you've got group version 2.06 without anything else. This is Ubuntu, and you can check here that we are under Ubuntu Secure Boot Vendor. So I can click on detect and show boot methods, and I will try to boot this 5.55 kernel, which is the Ubuntu one, because I know that Ubuntu is 5.15 and I know that Debian is 5.10. So I'm going to boot into 5.15, and you will see how this is going to boot into Ubuntu. Let's give it some time, because this is Ubuntu server stuff. Okay, so now we're going to reboot. Let's put here. Where the hell are you? Here. So now we have seen how you can boot into your Ubuntu kernel even if group.cfg has been deleted or has wrong values. Okay, so can you boot Fedora kernel without its shim? No, because there is no support. So I'm going to simulate this. So I'm going to try to boot Ubuntu without having loaded this thing here, okay? And you will see how it doesn't work. So Ubuntu is 5.15. So let's try to boot this from Debian vendor. Look what it happens. It says bad shim signature. So it does not allow you to load the kernel. So this is what would happen if you try to boot a Fedora kernel directly, as you can do here. You got an error, you get an error. And the same thing happens, if you are curious, the same thing happens. So let's assume that we change to Ubuntu. File to find. What the hell? This is not supposed to happen. So probably if you try to boot a kernel and go back, it fails. Look at that. This is the worst demo that you have ever seen. But I know that this works because we have just seen how it works. Okay, so let's switch from Debian to Ubuntu. And now let's try to boot into Debian kernel, and you will see how it does not boot. Okay, so that's what we have here. Yeah, apparently there is a bug when you try to go back to the first. Yeah, so Debian, Ubuntu. Apparently there is a bug here with some combination. But the thing is that that this is the problem, you know? The problem is that you cannot boot a kernel which is not from your vendor. Finally, can you boot Fedora or any other distro thanks to install shim? Yes, you can. How do you do it? You boot the shim binary. So I'm going to show you how this is done from scratch so that this works as expected, because otherwise we have some problems. So I am in Debian and I want to boot into Ubuntu shim without switching to Ubuntu shim that it's inside Super Grub2 Disk. Or I want to boot into Fedora shim. How do you do it? You detect everything. And then you go here and you search EFI. So you want to work with the EFI that meets your internal hard disk. So Your internal hard disk, as you can see here, is HD0. So your internal hard disk is here, HD0. GPT-1 is your EFI partition, and you have many entries here. So what you want to run is your EFI partition, Ubuntu directory, shim. And you will see how this is going to change. I mean, everything is going to change because Ubuntu shim, it's going to take control. And look at this. Look at this. Now we are on Ubuntu menu thanks to the shim. So Fedora should behave the same way. Once the timeout ends, you boot into Ubuntu or you boot into Fedora. Once again, if your Fedora installation is so bad that Super Grub2 Disk cannot find its shim file, or even if it can find its shim file, you have deleted group.cft, you won't be able to boot. Super Grub2 Disk won't be able to boot unless you turn off the SecureBoot and then boot with this image or maybe the classic one. Okay, so I have done a quick demo so that you understand what you can do with this version of Super Grub2 Disk. So thank you very much. Please visit the issues page, which is this URL. Okay, this URL here. Please visit and open a new issue and tell us which file name you are using so that we can fix whatever bug you find, as the one I have found about the file system not being found, which I'm not sure what the problem is about. So thank you very much for watching this video.